Before 2017, Resident Evil was in a tough spot. Capcom had been pumping out game after game, including spin-offs and sequels, trying to capture that lightning in a bottle moment that was the release of the original Resident Evil 4. All of these attempts had been unsuccessful, and the fans were starting to get a bit tired of all these RE4 clones, but the tipping point for that was Resident Evil 6.
This was considered the worst that the series could offer in terms of a mainline entry, and to some extent I agree with this. The game isn't great.
But Capcom used their tried and true method of making an RE game that is a drastic change from previous entries, and didn't link it to the rest of the series for the most part, and in 2017 we got the absolutely fantastic Resident Evil 7.
This was another turning point for the series as it kickstarted the current run of great RE games that we've gotten in the last few years. It all started here, on a new engine, with new characters, and bringing the gameplay back to basics. But today, I want to dive in a little further into the Baker residence in order to determine what made Resident Evil 7 so great. Resident Evil 7 was released in 2017 and was the first game to use the RE engine, and it definitely shows. The game doesn't look bad, but certain aspects such as hair or the occasional facial animation are slightly off. Overall, the game is great looking, but it could use a little more colour. Don't get me wrong, I like the washed out VHS-like look that the developers are clearly going for, but I do think other games that were released afterwards have more appealing colour palettes. There is also occasionally the problem of low-res textures being hidden under the layers of filters, meaning that if you get too close to certain objects, you'll be able to count the pixels. It feels strange that the game looks so good from a distance, but upon close inspection it doesn't always hold up. The other big point of presentation is the perspective shift. The series has changed once again, from fixed camera to third person and now to first. I really like this change. It makes the horror far more scary now since it is right up in your face, and not happening to some character standing far away from the camera. This made the game the scariest one in the series for me personally. The one complaint I have about the new perspective is the very narrow FOV. It can be adjusted, but the difference is minute. This can be fixed with mods, but we're talking about the base game, and I shouldn't have to rely on mods for features that should be in the game regardless. This led to a few instances of me taking damage from an enemy off screen that I couldn't see coming. But now let's talk about our main characters. Ethan Winters is our playable protagonist, and he's alright. In this game he has very little character, but he's a good, mostly silent protagonist that the player inhabits for their journey. Mia is basically relegated to plot device for this story since she isn't around for most of it. We do play as her for one segment, but even here it's just exposition and doesn't really tell us much about her. The other main characters are the Baker family who try to murder you. Each one of them has their own sub-area, which I'll get into when I discuss the levels. Story here is on the simple side, as with most RE games, but this one feels particularly simple. Your wife, who you thought was dead, sends you a message that spurs our main character to go looking for her in a particular spooky location.
Hang on a minute. That's just Silent Hill 2.
Okay, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, although it is remarkably similar. However, RE7 soon differentiates itself through tone and setting. We make our way to the swamps of Louisiana and encounter our wife being a little weird, a little goofy even, and as a result of that we lose our arm. It's fine though, because we just pop a cap in our ass before being punched and knocked out. Seriously? This guy can withstand being stabbed with a knife, having a screwdriver lodged in his hand, his arm cut off with a chainsaw, but not a measly punch from some old man? We wake up at a kitchen table to meet our antagonists, the Bakers. Our hand has been stapled back on, and this redneck-ass family is even more strange than the inbred fuckers they're based on. The family leave the room and we make our escape, but it's not as easy as that, as we are chased down by Jack. We escape the madman and are spoken to on the phone by Zoe, who is another member of the family, but isn't insane like the rest of them. She tells us to meet her outside, and we begin our hunt for items and keys. This eventually leads to us meeting a passing police officer in the garage where he is murdered and we fight Jack. Upon winning, we try to leave, but Jack ain't dead. However, he does leave us alone for the time being. We search around the Baker property, grabbing keys and ammo and guns while searching for 3 dog heads. This leads to a second confrontation with old Jackie Boy, where he's equipped with a set of chainsaw scissors, and we combat this with a chainsaw of our own. After putting the 3 heads in the door, we make our way out to the back garden to meet Zoe in the trailer, but she is nowhere to be found. We make our way into the boathouse where we are confronted by our second member of the Baker family, Marguerite. She is the mother of the family and uses bugs to fight us, which means this part of the game gave me the heebie-jeebies. We find Mia at the bottom of the boathouse, but she's stolen away by Lucas and we continue on. We now know we are looking for a cure to whatever has infected the Bakers and Mia, but we need a few ingredients in order to make it. To retrieve one of those ingredients, we have to get into a particular room in the boathouse with Marguerite's lamp, which she dropped when we beat her a few moments earlier, so no big deal. We go back and get it and...
Fuck that.
We reluctantly dive in after her and find ourselves in the greenhouse where our main fight with Marguerite begins. She has become a spider-like entity with extended appendages, and we shoot her weak spot located in her fanny.
Fucking hell.
After that's done, we head back to the boathouse to get the first ingredient before returning to the trailer to meet Zoe, but she is once again nowhere to be seen. We get a call in the trailer from Lucas, who has kidnapped Zoe now as well as Mia and wants us to participate in his twisted saw-like death trap. But first we need 2 keycards to get in. We explore the final areas of the house to get them and enter the testing area. Lucas sets up many kind of traps for us, like explosive tripwires, combat trials, elaborate puzzles with deadly consequences, all culminating in a final test which we beat, and Lucas does a runner before we can apprehend him. We continue forth and find Mia and Zoe and make 2 vials of the cure, but we are interrupted by Jack fucking Baker. He's back, baby, and a hell of a lot bigger, so let's take the fucker out. We kick his ass but have to use one of the cure vials, leaving us with a choice of who to save, Mia or Zoe. This choice falls flat for me for a few reasons.
1. I hardly know Zoe. I understand she's just a bystander who got stuck in a bad situation because her family got infected, but she doesn't actually mean anything to Ethan or to me personally. 2. Mia, while not having much more character, is at least the entire reason that we're fucking here. So why would you reasonably ditch her now after all the shit you've gone through to get to this point? And 3. If you choose Zoe, the story is infinitely less satisfying because she just dies in the next cutscene and we end up at the same place anyway in terms of gameplay, so the whole thing is meaningless unless we pick Mia. The only other difference is that Mia isn't in the final cutscene, but as evidenced by the fact that there's another game after this, that ending is non-canon anyway, so what's the point? You might as well pick Mia every time.
Back on with the plot, we are sailing out of this shithole when we are suddenly attacked and our perspective shifts. No, not like that. I mean, we take control of Mia to explore a wrecked cargo ship. We have a flashback while we're here of exactly what happened before the events of the story. Mia was part of a task force to help transport and contain a BOW called Evelyn. But they do a pretty shit job and she kills most of the crew and captures Mia before spreading out in the Louisiana swamp and infecting the Baker family. We come back to modern day and we have to save Ethan from low down in the ship. We cut to Ethan having a vision from within the mould where the Bakers talk to him and tell him to take down Evelyn and free the family of their infection. Mia saves us and we continue on with the mission. We find a radio to hear that there is help on the way, but that doesn't matter for right now. We head into the salt mines and not much really happens here apart from us retrieving a necrotoxin.
What does that mean? I don't fucking know, but it stops Evelyn, so I don't give a fuck.
We get out of the mines and into the old house where this whole thing started. Make our way to the top, seeing visions of Mia from throughout the intro before finding Evelyn, who is revealed to have been the grandmother all along. We inject her and she turns into a massive room-sized face that we shoot at until she fucking dies, leading her to explode out of the top of the house. We are dropped a gun by some mysterious helpers and deal the finishing blow to Evelyn. Our help arrives and it's Chris Redfield? When did you get a facelift? We leave in a helicopter with Mia by our side, finally putting an end to this awful night.
I really enjoyed the story of Resident Evil 7. It moves at a good pace and nothing feels wasted here. There's always another thing to be chasing or foe to fight, and I think it tells a nice, if basic, plot. I will also quickly cover the soundtrack here as I don't have much to say about it. I never notice it a lot of the time, and the only song I could pinpoint would be the save theme, which is nice, and has a calming yet uneasy feel to it, like the save theme from the original game. It's probably been playing in the background of this video.
Moving on from that though and on to the levels, I thought each location was fantastic, with the main house being the obvious favourite. The main house gives off similar vibes to the mansion from RE1 or police station from 2. It has a main hall with 2 wings with rooms that wind into one another, but also very easy to map out in your head after a few playthroughs. It has that similar iconicness to it like older games, and it's a joy to see return after 6's locations were so forgettable. This location is also where you'll find the bulk of your Resident Evil gameplay, finding keys to unlock new areas, backtracking for puzzles, balancing ammo, healing and key items to progress, and also has the stalker mechanic first seen in Resident Evil 3, with Jack Baker taking the place of Nemesis. He doesn't stalk you all the time, and he's pretty easy to lose, but he still adds that air of tension when he does show up unexpectedly. The boss fights with Jack here are good for different reasons. First one acts as a first triumph over a terrifying enemy, but with the ending leaving you even more scared of what this bastard can do, and the second being a proper boss fight. I like the idea of the chainsaw, and it totally fits with both the Texas Chainsaw Massacre inspiration and Resident Evil's off-the-wall stories. The house also has the first appearance of this game's common enemy, the Mold. The Mold look like the Regenerators from 4, but act more like your average walking corpse. They have a few small variations like the normal one, the one with the claw, crawlers, and later on the big boys, but for the most part they stay the same. The next location is the Boathouse, which is a small, pretty self-contained location that loops around on itself, with a few branches off of it. It's not very interesting to describe, but it is quite fun to play through. This area has Marguerite walking around, and if you encounter her, she has an army of bugs that will swarm you.
I'll see myself out.
There are also bugs on doors that you can only get off by collecting the parts of the flamethrower to burn them away. The greenhouse is also an extension of this, and it's where our boss fight is, which is fine. There's multiple levels to the place, and enough areas for Marguerite to hide and jump out at you. These areas serve more function rather than being an iconic location, and if I'm being honest, that goes for most of the locations after the main house. Third place is Lucas's testing area, and there's not much I can say about it. The area is comparatively linear to what we've seen before, however the last room in this area does include a great puzzle that actually takes effort to figure out, if you didn't play the tape labelled Happy Birthday, that reveals the entire puzzle, allowing you to skip most of it when you arrive as Ethan. There's a few other of these tapes throughout the game, one in the opening before you go to the basement to find Mia, and another one in the main house to reveal a bit about the boathouse you'll be in next. These tapes are alright, but on subsequent playthroughs aren't necessary. The boss fight with Jack at the end of this section is also not great. The whole thing is shooting all the glowing eyes, and then the fight ends. His attacks are also pretty easy to dodge or block, since he's so huge that the second he drops to the bottom, you could go to the top, and vice versa repeat until the fight is done. I'm not going to talk about the choice again, so we'll just move on to the cargo ship. This is my least favourite section of the game. The hallways all look the same, and the multiple floors get ridiculous here. Also not helped by the fact that you have to traverse it twice, once in the flashback and again in the present day, repeating a lot of the same bollocks you just did, with one added puzzle that goes across floors. This is about the point in the game where the level design drops off a bit in quality, as the salt mines aren't much better. Very linear, with one fun set piece of running out of the mine while swarms of enemies come at you and you have to defeat them quickly. Overall these areas aren't great, but the story is what carries the game here, not necessarily the gameplay. But I would prefer it kept up some of the elements of the main house throughout its runtime.
There was also a whole host of DLC released for this game, mostly being small side pieces, but I want to talk about the 2 story expansions that I believe are fantastic for truly concluding the story of this game. Not a Hero and End of Zoe.
Not a Hero stars Chris Redfield going after Lucas after the main game to bring him in and find out who he's doing business with, as they're interested in the mold. This all goes awry quickly though, as Chris has a bomb strapped to his wrist and witnesses a bunch of his squad mates die throughout the mission because of Lucas's traps and explosive collars. This all takes place primarily in the salt mines, but they are a lot more varied than the small section we ran through in the main game, leading to a small lab segment where we catch up to Lucas and have a proper boss fight with him. There's a few interesting mechanics here, like Chris needing night vision and gas mask improvements to his gear to access the different areas, and even has to watch his oxygen supply in the final fight, putting a stress on beating Lucas quickly. There's also a time section with the wrist bomb preparing to detonate, which was stressful as well, with the hardest mold variation being thrown at you to slow you down. End of Zoe has us playing as Joe Baker, as Zoe has been put into a cocoon-like state because of Evelyn, and we have to find a cure for her. Joe's gameplay is drastically different to the rest of the game, as he punches the shit out of everything. You can find little dolls in order to make yourself stronger, and you can craft healing items from critters and chem fluid instead of herbs. You come across an enemy that will not go down like the others and is significantly stronger. It acts as a slight stalker throughout the campaign, and eventually is revealed to be Jack Baker, who is the final boss at the end of the DLC. There are also sections where you must trudge through the bayou water and face against crocodiles with spears. Right before the final boss, we get a really cool electronic arm that allows us a more effective punch with much more power behind it. After the last fight, we finally give Zoe the cure, and she gets a call from Ethan saying that he kept his promise of saving her. This concludes all the events of Resident Evil 7.
I like these DLCs, and both act as nice conclusions to the few loose ends left by the main campaign. They don't necessarily expand the setting or the gameplay massively, but both offer something a little different in their approach, both leaning more into action than the main game, but one with guns and the other with melee. And that's all I have to say about Resident Evil 7. It's an amazing experience with a great resurgence for my favourite series, which led to us getting the amazing set of remakes and this game's sequel in the following years. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!